there's infinite possibilities, but it doesn't seem that these possibilities will organize random. That is, things aren't true because they're in religion. They're in religions because it's true. I've dug into this and I'm like, hey, how much would it really cost to build the infrastructure to end world hunger?
Hello and welcome to the Reality Practice Podcast, where I help share the truth that each of us are, in fact, designing our own realities every second of every day. And it's all being done through the power and the gift of our wonderful imagination. Today's guest is Michael Stevens. He's an author, a healing facilitator, and the owner of Neurology for Living Optimum. He shaped his dynamic life experience and knowledge base and now has established himself as an adept healing practitioner specializing in integration of deep emotional trauma. So, without further delay, let's welcome Michael to the show. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, what's up, Joey? Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I've been excited about. We've had this scheduled for a couple weeks, I think now, or a good solid week, and I knew quite a bit about you, from us
Yeah,
meeting a few weeks ago in California. But it really, when I got on your website and really started diving in, I'm like, man, you got some cool stuff going on. You've got to have a hell of a story of this journey and of this awakening that you've experienced. And I'd love to have you share it with the listeners. And let's kind of dive into what makes you tick and you know,
yeah,
doing to help save the earth, save the world.
yeah. That's an interesting question. Like what makes us tick? And you mentioned an awakening too, and I have a strange feeling that these awakenings they start way before we're aware that they start.
Okay.
Right? Like we become aware. Oh my gosh, I'm going through an awakening, but it's like this stuff probably happened long before we just are finally becoming aware of it. I think that's what's really interesting.
Yeah. I think we've been doing it for years and years. Everything happens exactly the way it's supposed to happen, in my opinion. And
Yeah,
we don't always see, we can't connect those dots as easily. Looking back now, it's like, oh, that's why that happened. That's why that happened. That's why I was shown that. But
yeah,
in the present moment, it's hard to be able to decipher what's real, what's not, why things happen. And like I said,
yeah,
we've all been waking up for a long time. We just haven't seen the signs, I have a feeling.
yeah. I was watching this documentary on the Holocaust, and it was about the family of midgets. They were Jewish midgets, and they were musicians, and so I think they were in Auschwitz, and they play these for the doctor and for some of the officers. And this doctor, I think it was Dr. Goebbels or Eichmann, one of those doctors, and he got like really fond of these midgets, and they so he did all kinds of special experiments on them, and it was pretty messed up. Like what they said he did was messed up, but
Uh,
he gave him food, and he gave him special privileges. He kind of like kept him aside and protected him. But what's interesting about this story is that these people, their whole life they were different from everybody else, and there were a whole family of them. They were alike, but they were different. But that was the one thing that allowed them to survive Auschwitz, because this Dr. Eichmann, he like set him aside and fed him, and so they had extra like privileges and those kind of things. And as they were looking back, they were talking about it, looking at their whole life and going, wow, like maybe from the very beginning, the very setback that they thought why they were born on, like when they came on this earth, was the very reason that their line was going to survive and pass on. And I can't help but think about that story, because there may be orchestration that is so much bigger and deeper than we have any idea, and it's more than just what happened to us in childhood. It's literally like in the genetic in the womb, things that are far out of our conscious control. However, there seems to be this organizing agent that knows exactly what it's doing, and it's way more sophisticated than we can imagine. Thank goodness, right?
I, I love it. Everything you just said, I resonate so much too, and believe. I could go even deeper on the fact, on the thought that there's only you, there's only me, there's only our unique version of reality. And like the story of the midgets in the Holocaust,
Yeah,
thinking, wow, we really had some divine intervention for us, for everything that happened to us. We're so lucky. Well, that's happening to each of us. Like every single one of us is literally being divinely guided. We just don't see it. Oh, woe is me. I'm the victim. This pain, this trauma, this bullshit happened to me. Even dying early. Somebody dying at 45 years old. It's like that's
yeah.
all part of the plan, and it's all just part of this journey. We can look at it in shitty ways, or we can look at it in the divine nature that it truly is.
I think it comes down to like what's our philosophy on this life? I mean, is this do we look at this as is this all we got? Is this it? Or are we just, a continuation of something that's going on way before and it's gonna go on way after? Like are we just like a little point in this little, a little ripple in this little river flowing? And
Yeah,
the more I dig into things, the more it seems that we are just a ripple in this river. You know, I mean, you look at time, and we start to get an idea of like who we are on a deep innate self level. Not
mm,
like not like this Michael that has this beautiful chocolate tan and this charming smile,
hey,
but
lady.
but the intelligence that's expressing itself through Michael. Like I got a feeling that part is a lot older, and it may not even be involved with things that we call like that we relate with time.
Right,
So and
right.
that's what's interesting about this.
Yeah, it's I've come to the new, over building my own understanding, my own philosophy. We are literally infinite beings. We don't ever die. We've been around longer than we can even fathom. We're just here for this short little 60, 80, 100 year experience. But I saw there was a video I watched a couple days ago, and it was talking about like they found this particle or one of the particles, everything, like the theory of everything is it's all the same particle, right?
Mhm.
Just times infinity.
It's all the dots. The only thing that exists is the dot.
Right, it's a dot, it was either this video or a different one, and it's talking about how going against the speed of light, like the universe is expanding out. If you go against it, the speed of light, it was something about it goes back and forth, like to the center of the universe where it started, all the way out to the farthest realm, to the outer
Yeah,
where it ends. And then when it hits there, it goes back and forth and back and forth. And it does that over and over and over infinitely. And this guy's like, he was some astrophysicist or whatever. And he's like, the time that it's been doing that is more than any human being can even contemplate. I mean,
yeah,
it's like 4 or 5 billion years for it to travel once across the whole universe or whatever.
yeah,
And doing that like infinitely forever. So expanding,
yeah.
contracting, whatever. And it's just like, yeah, time is so our concept of it is just it's mind blowing how much how long we've probably been here.
Yeah, that's kind of fascinating. Like I don't know what this video is. It sounds very interesting, but I was studying some of called Resonant Science Foundation. This guy named Nassim Harriman, if you've heard of him. It's incredible what he's doing with unifying physics.
Mhm.
But what's interesting, I'm not going to get too much into it because I'll sound pretty dumb. But what they're discovering is that the proton that the mass of a proton is 10 with 55 zeros afterwards, right?
Mhm.
And that's the actual mass. It has to do with if you took the actual space in a proton and stuffed it with these little Planck voxels, there'd be 10 with 55 zeros. Well, what was interesting, if you grabbed all the mass in the entire universe, all the atoms, and you compacted them into a centimeter cube space,
Mhm.
you have 10 with 55 zeros. So what's interesting is that you have the mass of the entire universe inside of a proton, but what he was saying is that it's very possible that a proton itself could literally be a model of our entire big universe. Like, right, like it could be the only thing that's different is scale, but the amount of information is the same. So if you think about it, if you go like, if that's the case, and scale is the only thing that separates us as far as like from one universe to another. As you go farther and deeper, you get smaller. You enter, like, just like you said, you enter into another whole universe, right? And then if you go smaller, right, and then you go smaller into another scale, it's the beginning of another whole universe. And so if you're like a little proton, you'd be the size of the universe, but as you go to a different scale, you're at the smallest part of a new universe. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, it does, and it's the idea, that I fully embrace that. We each have infinite possibilities for every single person. Every single thing has an infinite possibility for their experience of life, right? Like anything is possible, could happen, and it has happened already. So you've got this infinite possibility of anything. Now, couple that with every single thing, every single entity in the universe. I mean, that's a lot of particles, right? A lot of universes going on at once. It's got to be that way, like you say there, like you're explaining, because how else can we have all those infinite dimensions, levels of infinite possibility? If a universe isn't that microscopic proton or whatever, that one little particle, it's just mind blowing when you start getting into the physics of quantum, just that whole realm. It explains so much, but it leaves us so dumbfounded, like unbelievable what's really most likely happening.
Yes, because the possibilities, they are infinite. Like when you think about a human being, so we're made of 50 to 100. Is it is it 50 to 100 trillion? Is it trillion cells?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's
yeah. So 50 to 100 trillion cells that make up the human being, right? And each of these cells have to be they have to be a certain kind of cell. You can't have like skin cells in a liver cell. You can't have hair cells in an eye cell. Like they're organized a certain way, but each of those cells are made of 100 trillion atoms organized a certain way in a specific order. So if you look at the numbers, the possibilities are infinite. However, there's some type of organizing agent that organizes these things into a certain form. So you're not having people with not too many people with like feet growing out of their forehead, and you don't have a half tree, half laptop.
Right. I think there's a glitch every now and then, but yeah.
Yeah, there's some glitches, but for the most part, we see we see a tree, we know that it's a tree, even if it's not the same exact tree, and that's what's really fascinating about this. There's infinite possibilities, but it doesn't seem that these possibilities are organized randomly.
Oh, no way it could be. There's too many. There's no such thing as coincidences, at least in my opinion and what I'm seeing play out more and more. Everything is designed in a specific manner, a specific way. Have you ever read the book Urantia Papers? The Urantia book?
No, I've heard of it though, but I have not read it.
Yeah, it's an undertaking in and of itself. I finally just finished all of it like last month. I've been working on it for about a year and a half, and but just kind of a side project. But it gives the best explanation to the inner workings of the universe, like so in depth. It's like this. It's like one big political system, basically, that's just set up in so many structural levels from paradise where God literally is at to the next level of the archangels down to the planetary kings and princes and the rulers of this, the seven universes, and each universe, super universe, has like sub universes within it. And it's like 7,853 sub-universes within the main universe of Nebatron. And I mean, it breaks it down to where you're just like, what? It gets so confusing, but it outlines everything. If you really want to get into it, you can understand. And they've got their stuff online. It's pretty cool. You can get into the mapping, like your random maps and all this stuff. And it's just, it will blow your mind if you ever get time to do it. And it sounds too like you're obviously spiritual, but I don't know as far as Christianity, where you lie on any of that. They have a whole paper in there called the set of papers called the Jesus papers.
Yeah.
Insane, so incredible. It's like a day to day walking. It's like somebody's walking in the life, like as you're one of the apostles, and you're walking side by side with Jesus, literally writing down everything he does from almost birth to his resurrection. And it's, it's not so much about, I don't look at it in a Christian sense. I just look at it in what Jesus did. And it really dives into how he operates, the principles he was teaching as far as compassion and love, and how we all have these powers within. It's just a matter of, the meme I've seen a few times. It's Jesus preaching to everybody like, it's not me. You all have the same exact power I have, Just, you haven't realized it yet. And it's really, it's a fascinating, it's like 80 some papers long. So if you imagine a book with like 80 chapters, that's what that this papers part is. And it's really cool. So I always recommend that to people, whether, regardless of your religious, leanings. It was very impactful to me in terms of the principles of how I think Buddha and Muhammad and how all of them basically lived. And it's like laying it out for you right there in a blueprints.
Yeah. The subject of Jesus is very controversial, obviously, right? I have had a Christian background. Definitely, it's been the Christian doctrine has been very influential in my life, especially my early life. Like in my teens and then into my early 20s. But one thing that's very interesting about Jesus, as you look at this man's life and you look at his habits and the way just who he was. If you take this man and you put him in if you take this version and you put him in any religion, you put him in Islam, you put him in Hinduism, you put him in Buddhism, he will fulfill that man or that life will fulfill all those ordinances.
Right.
So the question is, I wonder, like, does that make other beliefs wrong in a sense, or is it? I don't think it does. I think it has to do with the human being we are, and if we live in line, we'll fulfill these. Like if you, and that's what's interesting about this, and the life of Jesus. And I think about religions, right? Like Howard Thurman, he was a mentor of Martin Luther King. He has a book that he wrote called Jesus and the Disinherited. It's a super fascinating book. But one thing he said is things aren't true because they're in religion. They're in religions because of truth. And then I started to go, oh my gosh, and I started thinking like, maybe there's this river of truth that flows through everything. And then on this river, we have little stops on the side. And one's like, hey, I'm Judaism, and one's Hinduism, and one's Christianity, and it seems like to God, if God is this omnipotent being that many claim him to be, he wouldn't see his creation as separate. He would. Yeah, he wouldn't. Yeah, he wouldn't. It's the same way as like to our body, like our nervous system or our cardiovascular system is not separate from neurology. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all one main system.
Everything works together to function, to give us life.
Yeah, like I had a stroke, I had a heart attack. They're the same freaking thing. Right? You just talk to a different kind of doctor, but to the universe at that level, like they're all the same. They're all together. They're all you know. And so if you start to look at these belief systems, and instead of looking at the little things that make us like to separate them, like, well, Muhammad, he's a descendant of Ishmael, which is still a son of Abraham. You know, well, I'm a descendant of Isaac. You know, they want to beef about that, but Gabriel appeared to both of them, right? Like,
Right.
Gabriel didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
You know, and as you start to look at these stories, you start to see these similarities, man. Like I've really been diving into like what the ancient Sumerians were saying 1,200 years before Judaism, and you start to look at the life of this Abraham. He was a Sumerian, you know. And you start, who are these Sumerian deities, and you start hearing about this Enki and Enlil, you know, these two, right? And then you start to go, oh, Enki and Enlil, and then you start to study what the Greeks were talking about with Zeus and Poseidon. You're like, wow, this is interesting. And then you start hearing about, oh yeah, Osiris and Set, and it's the same story passed down through different times. You start to go, oh man, you know, there's something interesting about this.
Right.
There's some serious similarities.
There's no, I you know, I might get blown up for saying it, you know, but I don't, as far as religion goes, they're all bullshit, you know, in the terms
Yeah,
of,
right.
they're trying to, they only exist for the manipulation and power that they're there for, to control you. You know, do this, don't do that. Believe this, don't believe that. When, you know, I had a project I wanted to start. It's in my I'll do it later folder, you know, which is full of stuff I'll never get to. But it's the idea I had was, okay, I want to analyze the top 10 religions in the world. And I want to do kind of a pros and cons of what their beliefs are and how many of those beliefs, like every single religion, I believe, will have the same 5, 10 fundamental principles, laws to live life by. And then all the other ones that kind of separate the religions, I guarantee and this is kind of the project I want to do, is I almost guarantee that all of the ones that separate the religions are self-serving, power, manipulation, control kind of too. It's rolled into the religion, whereas the true fundamental love, light, compassion, forgive, like all the things you're supposed to live by, like all the religions are identical. You know, they all have that. It's just the people controlling and wanting the power, they threw in all these other extra bullshit rules that don't serve God, they don't serve the religion, they only serve to separate, divide, and control. So it was just, I don't know if there's anything out there on it, but it was like a theory, I guess I had, like, so then I had to make my hypothesis that I felt that that's what I will find if I get the time to do it, is all the principles will be the same, all the ones that are different are the bullshit. So it's like, there's our universal truth, and everything else, throw it out.
Yeah. Well, think about this. You know, if I've dug into this, and I'm like, hey, like, you know, how much would it really cost to build an infrastructure to end world hunger? Like, what, like, you think about this, right? Yeah, right, because you know this is all bullshit, right? And so it would cost
dollars in the world.
It would cost between $7 and $50 billion to build the infrastructure to end world hunger.
Right.
And in 2020, there are 1,200 like billionaires on the planet, and three of them that we know of, right? Yeah, and three of them alone.
Trillionaires are, because those are the ones behind the scenes. The puppet masters, they just throw out the billionaires. Like, look at them. They're
well, not because the billionaires are the new millionaires, right?
Yeah.
But so three of those billionaires alone could pay for the infrastructure by themselves. You have 1,000 that don't even have to pay for it. And you know, you think about that, it's like we have all these religions and all these people that claim to be God's representatives on the planet, and all these philanthropists and all these whatever, and why isn't anybody doing this?
Right.
You know what I mean? Why isn't this happening? Why aren't people doing this? This could be taken care of and done. You know?
That's a good question. And I just thought about it, just thought about it as you said it. And it's like, I've had, I've lived my whole life knowing, you know, shit's not right. There's stuff, behind the scenes, what's going on, conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, yeah, it just doesn't add up to me. And so as you were talking, I'm like, why is it that way? And then I realized it has to be that way because you and I are creating the reality for that to exist. So the real question is not why aren't they those billionaires curing world hunger or whatever it is? Why aren't they doing that? Because you, myself, everybody hasn't created that reality. We needed this to learn from. What are we learning from it? What's the purpose of this struggle, this obstacle as far as world hunger? Why is it there? It's inside of ourselves. We have to learn something from it, be it compassion, forgiveness, who knows? But I mean, it's just, if you go to that aspect of we're all creating this and we're all here learning, it's just a big school to learn, right? So we're here to learn the the lessons of this life. So how does that play into? How does each that's what I try to do anymore. It's like how does each aspect of the world as I know it, how do the idea of evil people play into my growth? How do people getting killed, earthquakes, starvation, how does all this play into what I'm supposed to be learning? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, man. My mind is like firing off in like 50,000 different directions as we're talking. There's so many ways to go with that, right?
Right.
Yeah. You know, so so we have 50 to 100 trillion cells in our body, and then we have 10 times that many of the microbiome, which is the viruses and the fungus and the bacteria and all that stuff.
Right.
And our immune system doesn't attack any of those because it lives in harmony with our system. It's harmonized, so it's not even a threat.
Mhm.
And you think about that, it's like this is a level of organization that is way beyond 8 billion. You kind of wonder, you wonder like, you know, there's all of these individuals because each cell is an individual and it has the functions that a human does. It has a brain, it has a nervous system, it has an immune system, it eats, it shit. Like the cell does all kinds of stuff, but you have all these individuals organizing into a perfect harmonious event. And like the human being, like when you look at us, like we're an event, like you're an event, I'm an event. I'm
Right,
not
right.
just right.
I'm physical. Bullshit. You were just energy.
Woo, woo, yeah.
Particles of energy resonating at a specific frequency that makes this real.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, like I mean, we don't. Yeah, we never touch anything.
Right. There is
We've
nothing.
never touched anything.
Yeah, there's nothing to touch. It's all just a
Fields, man.
energy fields, right? That's kind of what I mean. That's a lot of the healing and everything you work with, isn't it? I mean, you're
Absolutely.
at energy spectrums. Tell me about that. I love talking about that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like you said, I mean, we're you can say we're this physical, we're an energetic being having a physical experience. But the more I study physics, um, unified physics, it seems that the difference between what separates the what we call physical and what we call like the ethereal is just the organization of the mass, like in the matter. It's the way that it's organized, but like we're clearly made of the same stuff that that appears invisible. That like for example, so if you think about an atom, if you take a diamond atom, diamonds are that's the most densest, hardest substance that we have. So that means the atoms are the closest, right? So if you blew a diamond atom up to a size of a lemon, the next closest atom will be 3 football fields away.
Wow.
So yes. So when I say it, so it's like we've never touched anything. So there's that much space, even in this solid stuff that appears solid. If you go into it, it's nothing but space. It's nothing but space. It's nothing but space. You
Together,
know.
together magnetically, in that formation because of the frequency it's resonating at.
Yes, Yes. And it seems that the space itself has more energy than actual matter. So what it seems that there's more energy in the space than in the matter itself. And so we have this inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have it inside of us and we have it outside of us. We have access to this at all times. And as a human being, there are areas in our life that are working really well for us. And there are areas in our body, in our physiology that are working really well, that feel really good, that are abundant. And as a healing facilitator, what I do is I just work on really focusing on what is that? Where is the free energy? And that's the energy that a human being needs to move their life forward. It has nothing to do with trying to fix their problems or you know fix their problems or cure issues. It has to do with focusing on, hey, what is really working right in their life and just going with that because there's enough information in those little areas to take care of the whole.
Right.
We get disconnected from what's important. You know, we
Yeah, I think that's the whole goal. That's the purpose, in my opinion, of what we're here for. We're living a third density, third dimensional existence, right?
yeah,
The fourth dimension is time. Third dimension is space, like is the physical real world, right? Then
okay,
fourth dimension is time. So right now we're in the process of living in that third and fourth dimension, trying to figure out and understand how time and space works. And as we're learning and evolving through that, that's when we get to step up to the next level. Once we pass this, where it's the wisdom level. This is all according to like the law of one, the raw
yeah.
material. I don't know if you
Oh
go
yeah,
much of that. Okay,
absolutely.
perfect. So yeah, it's that whole we're like ascending right now into that fifth density, really. Uh, but we're here trying to learn this whole how everything works in the polarities. It's the left, right, good, bad. Hot, cold. Right, wrong, whatever you
Yeah,
want. It's that we're living in this experience simply to understand the difference between those polarities so that when we move forward, we're either negatively charged or we're going to be positively charged. Which ones do we want to resonate with?
yes, yes, yeah. I hear you. It seems the more I move forward through life, it's less it's less easy for me to make judgments on anything, like especially negative judgments. Like now, it's almost like everything that happens, it's like where's the gift in this, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't see it as, oh, like I don't have like bad days or good days. It's almost like, wow, like because if you look into the details, there's so much. It's just it's so intricately packed with nuggets if you're willing to look at it.
Mhm.
Like like for example, this happened a couple of nights. This happened the night before last. Um, so I have a boxing background, and I love hitting the heavy bag. I currently still box, but I decided to I wanted to go to my actual gym. I go to Lifetime. If you ever heard of Lifetime? And the reason why is because I just want to hit the heavy bag, and I wanted to go in the sauna and the hot tub. So I just need to relax, right?
That's awesome. All right.
And so, but upstairs they got these heavy bags, and so I'm going to hit the heavy bag. And most guys who head in the gym, they don't hit the heavy bag. It's kind of a macho thing. And no, if you don't know how to box or fight, you don't want to be out there looking stupid.
Right.
Whatever, right? You just don't. It's just one of those things. You're. So, anyways, I come up there and I got my bag gloves with me, and there's one guy hitting the bag. This guy has a hood on, and he's like probably in his 20s, and he's just like, and he's obviously, I mean, he's hitting this bag like he's beating someone down, dumping someone into a gang. And
Right.
so there's like a top rectangle that the bags kind of slide on, so you can move the bag.
Mhm.
So he's hitting one bag, and the other bag is literally right next to it, right? And so I walk over there, and he's just hitting the bag super hard, and I quickly just kind of ran over to grab the other bag, and I pulled over the other side. And then, oh, that's when hell broke loose, man. So then he's like, "Hey, man, I don't appreciate you disrespecting me like that. I was using this bag, bro." And I was just like, "Hey, whoa, 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 hey, man, like," yeah, I was just like, "Yo, like there were 2 bags. Did you punch him on both bags? He's like, yeah, I was using both bags. I appreciate you disrespecting me. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, you know, so here I am. I'm trying to talk to this guy like, hey man, like, and he's called me a bitch and he's puffing up his chest to me. And I'm like, look, man, I'm not disrespecting you. I think you just misinterpreted what I'm doing. I just want to hit this other bag. I'm not, and so then the managers start coming, the other personal trainers start coming, trying to talk this guy down. The other guys are like, hey man, hey, he wasn't disrespecting you. And this guy was ready to be, hey, you want to go outside? You can go outside right now. And I'm just like, no, this is not going to happen, right?
Right.
So, I think about this, right? And I'm like, okay, this guy, he's a strong young guy. He's definitely he works through intimidation. I mean, for sure, as a man, I know this boy's been hurt. He's probably been hurt by the masculine. He's had to be in survival mode. Me just grabbing that bag, he lost his shit. And I thought about this, man. It's like, this guy comes to the gym at night and he hits his bag as hard as he can, like a psycho, and 99.9% of males, especially and females, no one's going to approach him. No one's going to even get near him, right? He's literally put himself in a house and locked all the doors and all the windows energetically with his anger, trying to keep himself safe, right? And then all of a sudden, I come in. It's almost like this guy walks in, crawls in through the window, or opens the door in the house, and he's supposed to lock, and it violated the shit out of him, man. That my energy, it violated him, man, because it was like, whoa, right? So it put him in fight or flight, and so I'm thinking about this, but in the midst of all this, right, I'm calm. I mean, this is being in this space. I can exist there because, I've been I've been there, and I've gone through. I've been where he's at. But in the midst of all this, man, like I see this man. I see in his eyes this anger, this fear, and I knew it wasn't for me. And in the midst of that, man, it's like I just feel love for him. Like I feel compassion for him. Like even right now, my heart is just like, oh, you know what I'm saying?
I'm feeling it. Just
woo.
You told me what happened. Like when you heard the story, the first thing that hit me was, God, what has happened to that poor guy that he feels that afraid of somebody coming? He has to put up that kind of a and that kind of persona. I'm like, wow, the trauma that had to have happened to him that he may know about or may not even subconsciously hiding in there, and that's just who he thinks he is. So I'm feeling it as you're talking about it. I'm like, God damn, how sad is that?
Yeah, it's so sad, but at the same time, it's like I'm so grateful that I was able to penetrate his field enough to violate his normal activities, enough for him to go, oh man, maybe in the reflection he can go, wow, that was crazy. Maybe I just went like ape shit over nothing. But if I see the guy again, I hope I do, and I hope I can connect to him as the human being that I am. Say, hey, let's do this again. I'm Michael. But I think about that, and what a blessing. What a blessing to be able to exist in that space with him and be able to see this. Because a lot of people, they get in that space and their sympathetics start firing up, and then it's very difficult for blood to flow to the cortex in chaos. It's a skill that you have to learn over time. It's not something we do naturally.
Yeah, if you logic, like when you're in that fight or flight, it's the blood flows, all those endorphins go up into your head, and it's your sole purpose is survival. It's like locks out the ability to logically think, because if you have to stop and logically think, you're dead. So it's like lock it all out, run, go, get to safety, then it'll let you think through. So you're able, I think that's a big lesson and big like evolution there. If you're as humans, being able to see a fight or flight moment and to be able to stop, pause, and think, and be present in that moment, and not allow the animalistic, the biology to take over. It's like, no, I'm in control here. I'm stronger than this biological bullshit. If that makes sense.
Absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you ask me like, what do I do with my practice? How do I actually help people heal? Well, I use a modality and I help influence the nervous system for the parasympathetics to kick in. That's when the blood flows back to the cortex, right? There's parasympathetic, which is rest, ease, and digestion. Then there's sympathetic, which is like survival. Oh shit, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And we get stuck in this sympathetic windup just from daily life, right? Like daily stresses. We have
Yeah.
events that we
Been
have trauma.
that way. If they can keep us in that sort of,
Yeah,
in that state, how can we ever think for ourselves? How can we ever
yeah,
evolve? How can we move
yeah.
forward? Keep us distracted.
Oh man, you got it right on, man. Yeah, and so as I help people get connected to the parts of them that'll help dial up the safety in their own life, so they don't have to depend on me or somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
their life starts to change because all of a sudden now, just like I was in the midst of this guy right in his face, in the midst of all that energy,
Yeah.
people can go back into the midst of their life, their stressful home, their stressful relationship, their stressful job, and actually have cortical function and actually are able to process and observe their life. Because otherwise, how are we going to ever change if we can't create safety in chaos? Because
Right.
I can't, right? Because I can't, I can't say I can, get you out of your chaos, but we can definitely bring more safety into your chaos so you can exist in that space differently.
I think what you said there was super powerful. It made me think of kind of just going back to learning to live in the present moment. Whereas what 90, let's say 95% of people in the world are programmed to live in the past, or in their failures, in their traumas, whatever exists in their mind, they're living there, or they're programmed to live in the future for their desires. You
Yeah,
don't have enough money, so you're living in the future of, I need to make money, I need to get this, or I need to, whatever it is that propelling you forward. But either way, you're either
you're
on
not
this
here.
side or on this side, but you're not here.
Here.
And I think what you're able to do with people is really allow them, unlock that ability for them to think in the present moment and stop drifting, stop shooting off in one direction or another. Because this stuff's make believe. Whichever way you go, this is the only center line here. That's the only real reality we have.
Yeah, that's so interesting. You said that, and being present, it includes the body. It, this is what I mean. So say I have a person in my studio laying on the table, and say they have their hands over their belly button, and it feels really good in that area for them, right? And so I'm just like, hey, let's just bring a breath here, bring your focus here, take 10 breaths, and just I'm like really just immerse yourself in that feeling. And then I'll ask them, hey, like, are you immersed there? Yeah. And then I'll ask them, okay, stay connected. Take your hands off your belly, but stay connected. I'm like, okay, can you stay connected? They're like, yes. Then I ask them the third thing. Now I want you to, while staying connected, I want you to open your eyes. And when people open their eyes and look at their life, their focus inward is very difficult to hold. And so I tell them like, hey, I want you to I want you to experience being in your life and in your body simultaneously. And that right there, I think, is the fundamentals of being present. It's not the be all say all, but it starts there. Because when we get stressed out, what do? We definitely aren't present in our freaking body. We
Right.
get
We're
the
going here or we're going there, but we're not.
hell yeah.
This is the safe place.
Woo!
This is the real,
Yeah.
this is where the healing's done.
This
And
is
it's like escape, go left or right, but don't go forward. Hell no.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that that negative that the negative energy from unprocessed events, as we get into a cycle of not processing and not processing, it gets stored up all throughout our body, and our consciousness gets ran out. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh shit, right? It gets ran out like those hoarders in there. There's no place for your consciousness to hang out. It's like fuck, so go somewhere else. And then who or what lives in our body? The squatters do. You
The
know,
squatters
the
do, yeah.
squatters do.
Squatters of fear, of doubt, of the,
Yeah,
like what I gave my speech on a few weeks ago, just the lie, the squatters of lies,
yeah.
bullshit that really doesn't exist, but we allow it to control and manipulate our reality.
Yeah, and the pathology just comes with it. The pathology. The headaches and the IBS, and because the blood is not the blood's not flowing to your intestines. You got to fight all the time, so you're not taking shits normally, right? Like you're not going to the bathroom, you're not sleeping because you ain't safe. You can't go to sleep if you're not safe. You're not making love. Nothing's happening because you need to feel safe to do that stuff. It's
Absolutely.
it's it's terrible. Hey, I have a question, man. Because I go through these conversations, man, well, I'll lose it. But you talked about we were talking about safety and just the difference between when you don't feel safe and how you process life and when you do feel safe. And I remember your talk. You were talking about revisiting some past experiences, some trauma, like literally revisiting it on a quantum level.
Mm-hmm.
And what so my question is to you: for you to revisit those things, did you have to be in a different state than you were at the time that you did when these things happened? And what was the difference for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, I went into, a meditative state, obviously, but, that it was at a Tony Robbins event. So if you've ever done those, he elevates your state before anything. You're hopping around, you're jumping, you're got the blood flowing, everything's go. Your lymphatic system's going, and then that's when you go into that state. The meditative state. He takes you. We went right into it, and I think we started off like lifting our feet up. Sitting down or lifting our feet up, and you're trying to get to that point where your feet are touching the ground, but they're not touching the ground. Like you're
Yeah.
so light. You're
Yes.
just hovering in that zone of in between. And that's kind of where I went at that moment, was I went into that kind of in between realms in my mind and went down, went back into that quantum level, like you said. And I went into my body, and I went into my mom's body, and went into my biological father's body, and it was so trippy. I mean, I was really there, and I was feeling, it was like a portal, like I went through a space-time portal, and I just came out on the other side, and I'm literally in their body, like, oh my God, this feels crazy. But it felt real. Was it real? For me, it was.
Yeah.
Can I explain what happened? No, not like most things are unexplainable. But yeah, I definitely went into a different state. I wasn't
Yeah.
I wasn't technically here.
Yeah.
I wasn't present here. I kind of jumped into a different reality, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think there's something to that. I think healing healing comes down to being able to revisit things that have happened and be
Mm-hmm.
able to look at them and observe and take in more information than you were maybe originally able to, and create it so that you can create a more accurate story. The story, the story, yeah, more accurate, not changing it, not making shit up as if it didn't exist. You don't need to, but looking at a much bigger picture, and the bigger picture changes you.
It's
I mean,
exactly what you were saying, how the fight or flight, like for most of us, that traumatic moment shuts our brain down. So
yeah,
we're not taking in, we're not observing, we're not perceiving everything that's really happening. We're
tunnel
only
vision.
we're only seeing, yeah, what's safety, where do I go, and you shoot that way. So absolutely, I think you're spot on there. It's like when we go back to heal those past traumas, we have to get into a state, we have to physically go back there in our mind so that we can do that. We can see it and open yourself up. It's like almost being present where we weren't present before.
Yes,
We
yes,
weren't living. Maybe that's how the traumas even arrive and come, is from not living in the present moment. If we're allowing ourselves to live in the past or in the future, then traumas can attach themselves. But if we're always living in the present, perhaps they don't have an ability to attach themselves to us because we're sensing, we're feeling, we're seeing everything.
yes, yes, yes.
It just came to me while we were on this topic here. So That makes sense now.
Yeah, man, that's so many places to go with that. But you said that things can attach themselves to you, and it's like think of our say our body was like a big giant mansion, right? There's all these many rooms, and if you don't take care of certain rooms, you can like there's a lot of abandoned houses, right? People and there's squatters living in them.
Right.
If we don't occupy consciously these rooms, something else will. And yes, right. And it seems like that's like the deal. So we talk about demonic possession and all these other like what are places that can where are the footholds? They're the places that we're not aware of.
Yeah.
Where else would they be? There's a biblical scripture that says it's very hard to overcome a strong man in his own home. You have to be unaware before the enemy comes. And it's the same thing. And we see this in nature, right? Like, if we're cultivating a garden, there's that constant battle between order and chaos. Once you stop taking care of it, the weeds will grow, and they don't need your help.
Yeah.
They don't need your help. But this is what else is interesting about the weeds. The weeds will always have inside of them what the soil actually needs that they grow out of. If there's a soil deficiency, it's actually in the weeds. But you got to, you have to figure out a way to process and put those back into the soil. That's kind of another. But I think about these. We talk about strongholds. If you have a background in Christianity, talk about demonic strongholds and family strongholds, and it seems to come the places that we're unaware or unable to connect to. Those are the places that have the strongholds in our life.
Right. When we're young, places we can't be present in,
Yeah.
Wherever we're present, maybe we're present in 10 rooms of the mansion, but the other 70 rooms are vacant or they're filled with the I was laughing. My coach calls it the shitty committee.
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah.
The shitty committee, they all moved in and they're living in the 70 rooms of the mansion because you can't be present in all 70 of them. So they're just like flooding in.
Yeah. It's biological and it's psychological. I mean, Carl Jung talks about the shadow, and he talks about the whole life journey of the self is to integrate the unknown into the known. So there's less of you. So there's less of you that you don't know that's fucking with you.
Yeah,
It's sabotaging you.
Yeah,
it's sabotaging you.
Point of knowing yourself fully and not having any vacant rooms in the mansion, then we're the perfect. We're living in God's like perfect alignment. But I don't think it's. I shouldn't say I don't think it's possible because anything's possible. But in maybe this third density, this level of the game, I don't think it's possible. Maybe once we do hit that clarity, that's when it's like poof, we ascend to the next level. It's like the video game end screen, the level's over, like, yay, you did it. It's like, what the hell just happened? Then you remember, the remembering. It's like once we transcend this level and go to the next one, everything we remember it all, and it's like, oh, that was such a fun journey. I can't believe I took it so seriously. It was so real, and it's like, oh, it's all just a vacation in our mind, from the reality of who we really are.
Yeah. You know what? I hear you, man. You know what shocks me is our ability to forget extraordinary things. And this can go just from like when you wake up and you have an amazing dream, and you're like sitting in bed and you're trying to remember as much of it as you can because it's just epic, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's gone. Yeah. I mean, this could even be like we're taking psychedelics and stuff, and you have the oh my gosh, and all of a sudden that eraser comes like no, it's like no. It's like
the veil's so powerful on us.
Veil, man.
Like every once in a while we get to open the curtains, but it's like, nope, shut them. You can't. We're not allowed to see that much at this point in our journey. It would probably overwhelm us. How many of the people in mental institutions, in all actuality, just saw too much of the other side of the veil. They pulled the
Yeah.
curtain back for too long and they actually saw what's
Yeah.
next or whatever. And the curtain closed on them. And now they're just kind of stuck with all this knowing, yet they sound crazy as hell because
Yeah.
we can't relate to it because we can't see that far through the curtain, but maybe they saw. You know, I
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there are some illnesses out there that are pretty crazy, with people, but I think a lot of it's misunderstood, most likely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, just think about how science progresses now, and like just new. Trying to think of like new information that gets introduced that was just ostracized maybe a decade ago or 50 years ago.
Oh yeah. I mean, the idea that Newton, all of Newton's laws, basically anymore are bullshit.
Yeah.
Including gravity. Gravity, they're finding is bullshit. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
to experience it because we're here in a three-dimensional world. So you have to have that gravity. You have to have the gravity in the third and the fourth dimensions because you're space and time. The idea of if you don't have a distance to travel, you don't have time. So that's
Yeah.
the idea of gravity has to exist on this level because you've got to be pulled or pushed towards something. But yeah,
Interesting.
but the idea of gravity in and of itself is bullshit. When we get to a certain level of understanding, it's like it doesn't need to be there because we're just infinite particles. We're infinite beings. We're connected to everything. So what's gravity play a role in it?
Yeah. That's a yeah. Like so, like Einstein coined space and time called just space time, right? Because like you can't have if I'm going to go from this side to that side, there has to be some idea of the transition from going from here to here,
Right.
right? And that's like what they would be called time,
Mm-hmm.
And so and so it's interesting. We talk about like gravity and we're all connected. So one of the things that the team Harriman and the Resident Science Foundation is finding out is that the proton, the mass of a proton is identical to the mass of the universe. So that's kind of cool, whatever, right? But what makes this very interesting is that if that's the case, then the mass of a proton fits what's called it obeys a certain condition called the Schwarzschild condition. Carl
Okay.
Schwarzschild coined this condition. He's the guy that created the condition or the term, the condition for a black hole. Yeah, right. For a black hole, we always think of these giant black holes have to be huge, right? It's not about the size; it's about the information that can be packed in there.
Yeah,
So
infinite.
infinite. And it didn't even have to be infinite. It has to, I think it's like 10 to the 29th, 10 to the 29 zeros or something like that. It was still massive. I would
Mm-hmm.
love to have, you know, I love to have, there's a couple more zeros in my bank account. The 29, whoa, you
Right.
know. But what was interesting is that, so if a black hole meets the conditions of or if a proton meets the conditions of a black hole, we're full of these protons, right? But what also makes it interesting is that if there's that much information in one proton, 10 with 55 zeros, that means that proton knows what every other proton in the universe is doing.
Mm.
So not only does this proton have its own sense of like quantum gravity,
Yeah.
it's entangled or connected or knows what every other proton is doing in the entire universe. So it's
Right.
like you think about gravity and being connected. It's like you start to look at our connection and entanglement a lot differently than just maybe the more standard. We live on this planet and it's heavier than us, so we're stuck on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Or so I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes any sense what I said, but
It does in the sense of when you're looking at it, I guess, from time space versus space time. Those are two separate things. Like we live in
interrupting.
time space. You know, things take time to go from here to here. But in
Yeah,
space time, there is no that, everything is connected it's one, it's in harmony, but it could be on two separate sides of the universe, you know,
Yeah.
here and here. But in order to go from here to here, if quantum physics is telling us that they're both, if something happens to this proton, it happens to this proton at the exact same time on the other side of the universe, right?
Entanglement.
Entanglement, correct. So therefore, you get out of time space because you can't physically connect the two. So you have to go into space time, which is no time, it's instantaneous. So there's two separate, that's, I think a lot of the stuff in the Urantia book talks about time, space, and in Law 1 versus space and time. And I think that's where we're ascending to. That's where we start to, when we begin the ascension, or when we finally ascend, that they say is going to happen, we'll go to a place where we can go anywhere and be anything instantly. Like our powers of manifestation, our powers of creating reality literally become instantaneous. Then we can go anywhere and create anything. And to me, that's the idea of we're entering into space time at that point. To where now, if I want to be on the beach somewhere, I don't have to fly in an airplane through time and space to get there. I can literally think of that space, that point in space at that exact time, and I just harmonize with it. I find that frequency of that exact moment in space somewhere at that time, and boom, I'm there. I'm on the beach. And it's just as real as this is right now, sitting here talking to you. I have all the memories, all the past of my entire life as I believe it to have been, up to the point where I'm sitting on that beach. Same goes for being on a jet. Same goes for having a job, or whatever you want to, wherever you want to be. You want to be the heavyweight champion of the world as a boxer. You can find that exact space time point in the universe, just find that frequency and harmonize with it, and boom, you are that heavyweight champion of the world. And every memory that happened prior to that is in your mind because you harmonize with all of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think you're onto something like awesome, because you talk about space. Because I think a lot of people don't acknowledge space as something. Mm-hmm. And so like what's the one thing that connects everything together?
It's what? Space, or
space.
What you talked about earlier, the in between of the that we can't see, but it's there.
Yes, it connects us all together, and it's on all scales. Mm-hmm. The smallest to the largest. We talk about the space in the diamond atoms, right? There's all this space, and it's not empty. It's the one thing that connects everything together. It's the soup that you and I are connected to right now. And so it's interesting. If we focus on the matter, then we have to go through space to get from matter to matter. But if we focus on the space, we don't have to go through anything. It's already there. I think it's just really fascinating what you said, man.
Right. And I think I just realized an analogy on that. Literally, space-time is that metaphor, that example that the college professor, the teacher does, where he fills up a jar of rocks. Is it full? Well, yeah, no. He puts the sand in. Is it full? Well, yeah, no. Then he puts the water in, and that water is what you're talking about. That's the water is the space that's connecting everything. If you want space like that, and then the sand is your particles, your single cell protons, and then maybe the rocks would be your molecules, whatever, bigger and bigger. But the idea is, as it gets bigger and bigger, you've got rocks, and you've got boulders, then you've got mountains, and that's how everything's built out. But it comes down to that water that was poured in there is what's connecting everything. And if we can figure out how to get in flow with that water and get into that water, that frequency, boom, we can travel anywhere, everywhere, and instantly.
Yeah, and because everything in there is made of the same stuff as the water is anyway.
Right. If I want to go to this, like if the jar is this big, yeah, and that water's touching, you've got this rock here and this rock here, and I want to go from this rock to that rock, then yeah, that water, you just navigate through it, and it's like instant. If you put electrical charge through that water, that entire jar of water would be electrically charged, right? The whole thing. It's not like it goes zzz, and takes time to go there. The second you electrically charge all that water in there, everything is united. Everything is charged together. So now you become here and you become there. Wouldn't you?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm talking out my ass at this point. It's just kind of thoughts are coming to me. So I don't know.
The best conversations are the ones when we start thinking out loud, right? Like that's the best conversation.
Absolutely.
You know, that's when shit gets interesting.
Glad to have somebody I can talk about this stuff with. My wife, she gets bored with it or frustrated or just tells me to shut the hell up because she doesn't want to talk about it. It's like, oh.
I hear you, man. My wife, yeah, we have similarities. I was thinking about this. It's like with what we call space, there are no boundaries. The only boundaries that we experience is the matter, or what we that those are the boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start, you look at just around you, or you look outside, and you wonder, like, is it the matter itself, the thing that defines the space, or is it the space that defines the matter?
Mm.
And I start to look at that, like I look around and it's like, man, like what if the space is the only thing that really that's real, and like
it's invisible stuff that I can't even see is actually
real.
It's actually real, and this my desk, everything else is fake.
It's like all we're seeing is just the negatives. Like it's like we're just seeing what actually, like, where the space isn't, and we consider that a thing. Like, I don't know, just woo,
Very well could be. Yeah. I'm sure people are going to think we're smoking all kinds of stuff after this.
Oh man, well, not today at least, man. But yeah, this life is it's all magic, man. Like we can look at the same thing and see it as like an ordinary, mundane thing, or we can look at the same exact thing and see it as magical. It really just, it's the eye of the beholder, and I think it just comes down to becoming more sensitive, learning the skill set to be more sensitive and be more aware of the subtleties that encompass this world that's right in front of us. We talk about being energetic beings, and there's the philosophy behind being more dense, and when we're more dense and more physical, we're less aware of the more subtle energetic qualities to our being, and we clearly are energetic beings, and I think that having the ability to soften our awareness so that we can experience those special qualities of life is where it's at. There was that scripture. I use lots of scriptures. You can tell it's like my background, but Elijah was I don't remember the exact verse, but anybody who's a Bible thumper will know what I'm talking about. But Elijah was waiting for God to arrive, and there was like an earthquake, and it said that God wasn't in the earthquake, and there was like this, there was this thunderstorm, and God wasn't in the thunderstorm, and there was this giant like firestorm, and God wasn't in the firestorm, and then there was a still small voice, and that was the voice of God, is that whisper. It wasn't in the thunder, it wasn't in the lightning, it wasn't all these giant things, it was in this whisper. And I think really learning how to quiet our minds in our life, or at least find the silence so that we can hear that whisper. Mm-hmm. And that takes creating peace and safety in chaos, in the chaos that we have, and those people and I think the people that are able to do that are the ones that are the most resilient. And I think that's what we're here for, man. I think that's ideal, and it's not for me to tell you or someone what they're going to find there. It's just to help someone get there. And
absolutely. I think for me, I've really, I don't fear anything anymore because I've seen enough behind the veil that I know everything's going to be awesome. Everything's going to be okay, whether I'm physically here right now on Earth or I'm not. I pass away, my body, my mortal body dies. Who gives a shit? I'm so excited for what happens next because I've seen enough to know that this isn't the end. I'm not ready by any means to finish this experience off. I tell people I plan to make it to at least 150, if not 180, is my target. And it might change, but as far as this mortal body with science and everything that's coming out, 150 to 180. I'm a quarter, if not a fifth, into my life. So I got so much freaking time. And so why worry? Why rush on time? Worry about time. Like, oh, I'm not getting where I want to get fast enough. There's an infinite amount of time if we just choose to see it that way instead of always worrying that there's not enough time. But going back to it, I don't fear anything. I don't fear lack anymore. Do I fall off the wagon every now and then? Do I, revert back? Absolutely. But 95% of the time, my mindset, I have no fear. I know I'm protected. I know that I'm infinite. I know that you or me, I am you, and all is one. All is good. So it's like it just gives me this harmony and this peace with myself that I don't try to take anything too seriously anymore. I take this serious, trying to teach people and show people the truth. Other than that, it's like, the money's going to come. Can we pay the bills next week? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's like I don't get worried about this shit. Is my family going to be okay? God, I pray that they're okay. But if something for one of them today, it was their time, their choice. In the grand scheme of things, that was what had to happen. So it's like I take it as it comes anymore. And I don't try to put labels, I guess, on life. It's just experiencing it for the grace that it is. You said it earlier. Uh, seeing all the moments for what they are and not reading things into them. And I apply that to living in grace, which is what I've been blessed to do for like almost the last year. When it really started to wake up for me, it's like everything is grace. There's no reason to get angry. That guy that wanted to fight you at the gym, you looked at him with grace. There's no reason to be angry at him. He didn't know. It's not his fault. He's angry, misguided, but it's not anything you did. So why should you be mad at, he did nothing wrong. He subconsciously, I don't, I'm going on a rant now, but it's
no,
just,
I hear you, man.
so.
I hear you. And we like to put boundaries on things. I think that's what we do as humans. Like this, I kind of wonder, like, this Homo sapien part of us, is it a blessing or is it a curse? Is it, did our creators decide to, and I say yes, creators, human chromosome number 2, check it out, guys. It's not natural. But the people who engineered, I should say, the Homo sapien, I wonder, like, is this frontal cortex, is it something that just has the ability to dissect and dissect and dissect and just cut things out, look deeper and deeper and break things up? Or, or is our true magic ability to be able to see everything as a whole, as one whole thing, because we like to think into things and, well, what about this? What do you think about this? And what happens about this? What happens to this? And then it's like, or maybe it's just so beautiful that we have the ability to do both. And maybe that's what makes the Homo sapien special, is our ability to both observe and participate. So
Right.
interesting.
I mean, That's a whole nother discussion right there.
Yeah, yeah. We can cut things in half, or we can bring them together, and like that's our choice. I think that's our magic power.
I think we do have we've been given a gift that the rest of the universe, like the beings out there, they don't have. Like we've been forced, I think, to come here and live this pain, so to say, this experience that everybody lives in of this perceived pain, right? We were given this gift of living it, but it's taken all this time of evolution for us to no longer see that it's pain, that it's
Mm-hmm.
really a blessing and a grace. And then that gives us this ability to start creating. God, we are God. God lives within each of us, and we're creating as God creates instantly. Whatever God can create, we can create it because
Yeah, right.
He just said, go down, play these roles, and figure
Right.
And then the figuring out process and the remembering process is all that pain and all the bullshit. We have to experience every negative thing that could go wrong to understand the opposite so that we can create the positive, right? So
Yeah.
that's my understanding of what this all is it's just it's the bullshit is not bullshit unless if bullshit, the pain, the trauma no longer exists once you kind of pass that level, once you realize what it's all really about. Now, once you get past there, it's like, awesome, what can I create now? What can I truly build and design and see come to manifest, right? I use the idea of if God gave us God gave us this power, but he hasn't unleashed it on us yet. Because if if he unleashed this power that we truly have and said, okay, everybody have it right here, right now on Earth,
Yeah.
literally the Earth would explode and we'd be dead in 10 seconds because of
Mm-hmm.
the fear in everybody's minds. If they get this true power to create, they're going to create alien invasions, earthquakes, starvation, nuclear wars,
Yeah.
floods. Like every subconscious fear in people's minds will instantly manifest if we were given that ability, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's the responsibility. We don't get this responsibility to consciously create until we go through all of the bullshit
Yes.
from it and understand that it's just our imagination creating it. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, we get a little bit more of the gift given to us. Like, okay, I'll unlock door number 7, but until you get to door 10, you can't fully just instantly create, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like we're progressing up. We're at door 7, and next evolution you have, you'll get the keys to door number 8, whatever. And now you can create even faster and bigger. I don't know. It's an idea I've been playing with on it in terms of how it works and how we're growing in our abilities. And it's because some people can't create shit. Everybody's creating, right? They just don't consciously know they're creating it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the idea of learning that we are doing it versus blaming the universe for doing
Yeah. I think what you're saying is more than just a good thought. I think what you're saying is it's right on. You talked about responsibility, and so I'll just tie in healing. And when I say healing, I don't mean just like oh my cut healed or like oh I'm you know my broken heart is mended. I mean the process of self discovery is what that is, and so you talked about people not being able to realize their full potential because if we did without having the wisdom to stand beneath that, then there'd be some serious problems. And I think that talk about responsibility and healing and responsibility, personal responsibility, I think they come hand in hand. Um, and it's not just about just having power. It's like we start to realize things about ourselves that we don't know.
it. Right.
Right? And we start to realize that maybe there's times we could have been the bad guy when we thought we were the thing. There's times that you find out someone was your friend, and like there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. One of the things that I've learned is that as we grow in awareness, we have to become flexible. We have to grow in our flexibility, because if we grow in awareness without growing flexible, we can break. You know, like right with, you know, if we're brittle and if we're brittle people and we decide to put more stress and more responsibility, we will literally break. And I think that there's this there is this innateness that comes with our humanity, that there's that, you can say that intelligence, that organizing agent that knows how and where to lead us through these ebbs and flows as we uncover these stones and learn more about who we are. And there's no hurry for it. And I think it's always perfect timing, you know. And I think that, you know, one of the things that really stood out to me about you when we're at that last event was your ability to revisit, you know, your ability to go into difficult places where most aren't, and your ability to find treasures that most people are not able or willing to find for themselves. And I think that that's the only real treasure we've ever had, is through our life experience, buried in these caves of what we may call the past, you know. And I think this game seems to be perfectly rigged for us to win if we're willing to just look at what we have and look at who we are.
Bingo. I perfectly said. You know, this game is rigged for us to win. Everything falls into place exactly the way it's supposed to at the time it's supposed to happen. We can't push it, we can't rush it, you know, we just have to accept it. And it comes through that going back and seeing that everything that has ever happened is pure grace. Everything that has ever happened is a lesson to be learned. It's going to continue to happen over and over and over in different ways until we learn that lesson. And once we learn that lesson, it's gone. It never has to be repeated again. And we'll get different lessons. We'll get different bullshit that comes in.
Yeah.
Never ending stream of bullshit until it's no longer bullshit, until it's just another stair to climb. It's another rock to, you know, another reaching up the mountain, just another grab and go, grab and pull yourself each time. It's not bullshit, you know, it's not pain, it's not suffering. It's just another step on the ladder.
Yeah. It's our resistance that causes the suffering, the pain, right? It's a fucking resistance.
Right? Because it seems so scary and it seems painful. But once you're past, it's like there's no fear. There's nothing that can happen. It's all being, you know, everything is happening for us, not to us. Right?
Yeah.
That's the grace that I get to live in. You know, I felt my computer just crashed and everything. You know, I've been freaking out, not freaking out, but I've been trying to fix this and frustrated with it. I was telling you about it before the interview, but there's a reason it happened. I don't know yet why, but I'm trying to see the good in it. It's going to take a whole day of fixing everything and cleaning stuff out, but guess what? Maybe I'll get my entire computer organized correctly.
Yeah.
And unload all this bullshit that I don't need on there that's not serving me.
Yeah. And maybe you'll find an old file that you need that you forgot was there too. Like, oh, damn. Like, you know, right?
That disappeared from yesterday. So who knows? You know, I try not to look at anything negative anymore. It's just, how is this serving to make me better? How is this serving to help me versus hurt me? Because God wouldn't want to hurt us. God, the last thing God wants to do, if we're God doesn't want to hurt himself. God wants to make this so much fun. God wants to make this so easy for us. She, the creator, whatever you want to look at it, is looking down on us crying, you know, or laughing, you know, or excited, whatever we're doing.
Or maybe laughing so hard he's crying.
Right. He's like, how many times do I have to send this message to him? Jeez Louise. But it's a game. And when we beat ourselves up on it, what the shit, you know? So many people are just living a life of sadness, of pain. Doesn't need to be
And I think that, I think we're taught to interpret our symptoms incorrectly, too. Like, like, for example, like, oh, your tonsils are swollen because your tonsils are fighting their lymphatic organs, so they're fighting something for your body that's something to remove the tonsils. It's like my back is messed up. I messed my back up. I'm gonna get a shot, so I don't have to feel my back. So I don't have to feel the pain, so I can continue doing what I was just doing. I'm depressed. Something clearly off. The emotion that's going through my body, I'm not regulating it. I need to take an antidepressant so I can feel better when I don't deserve to feel better or when I shouldn't feel better. Like we remove the warning bells that this innate intelligence has given us to help drive action, right? To help drive healthy action. Like you eat this stuff and you eat this stuff and your stomach starts getting upset. Your body's telling you it's not probably the best for you, bro. Like, or it's this. Like, stop eating that. No, I'm just going to take this so I can keep eating this shit, right? Like,
right. I'm having a couple Tums and
whatever. Yeah, like it's time for us to really allow the intelligence that we are to step to the plate and for us to work with who we are on an innate level. And I think that's the biggest difference to live from the inside out. Because if it's true about the scales and the protons and how the universe works in scales, then from going inward, you have multiple infinite universes that we can access with information. But going outward, we hit a boundary. Inside, there's no boundaries. And so it's interesting,
Yeah, I like just the idea of the intuition and really, you're right. We haven't been taught how to read our emotions, how to feel, how to gut instincts, or how to use common sense. I don't think anymore. That's kind of left society for the most part. It's that fight or flight, circles back around. You can't see the 2x4 smacking humanity upside the face because they've been so programmed with fear that their fight or flight is just they're running and they can't stop and logically say, wait a minute, how is that even possible? They can't even ask questions anymore because they're clouded up here. They can't. Right. We'll break free, one of these days. It's just a matter of time, Before we wrap up, I was going to ask you. We're getting close to about an hour and a half, I think, at this point. So, you had said something about remind you about your phone and your video on your website. Something about.
Oh yeah. Oh, great memory, man. Yeah. So on my website, if you look on the about page, I have a video that I made.
What's your website? I'll put it in the comment. I'll put all the information in the comment.
Thank you. My website is living-optimum.com. Living, like living dead, living-optimum.com. So on the about page, there's a video I made called "Falling Awake," and it's
awesome. You guys got to go and check that out. It's what kind of a rap video song?
Yeah, well, I wrote it as a poem. I wrote it. It was a poem. It's more spoken word, and so so I put some music behind, but really it's really a video about my personal journey and also what I do as a healing facilitator and this conversation and what I've learned and it's just all of that together. Just like, this is what I have to say about life and where I've been and where I'm going, where I think I'm going, and blah blah blah, right? But so there's a scene in there. I live in Northern California, and so I live real close to the Nevada border. So out in Nevada, man, the northern desert, there are ancient petroglyphs all over the place out there. Nevada is so fascinating, man. And so there's a place called Lago Martino Canyon by Virginia City, and these petroglyphs are really remote, but it's a special place for me. And so me and the videographer, we went out there, took my Jeep out there, and you got to go 4-wheeling to get there. And so we did some filming out there. And so we wanted to get out there right before sunset and just because the colors are better. You can see the petroglyphs real well. And there's this last scene of the sunset behind us. And but what ended up happening was I was using my phone to play the song music. So I play the music so I could sing the music, so when it's recorded, it could be in sync.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this one last scene, and there was these rocks out there, and I set my phone down right in front of this rock so I could just like, act out this last scene. And then right when this happened, we finished it, and then the music turned off. And I looked on the ground, and I was like, "Oh shoot, where's my phone? Like, where's my phone?" So this is what's interesting. I'm looking around for the phone, but right at that same moment, I felt this presence. It was a presence. And it was a feminine presence, and it was powerful. And it wasn't like, oh, like, hey, lady. It was just this like mom kind of thing, but it was deeper and more primal than that. It was just like there was a moment that I was like, we're not alone.
And Mother Gaia.
Oh yeah, it was palpable. It was tangible. And I talked to the videographer. I was just like, you feel that? He's like, oh, bro. I was like, this is that. I was like, dude, this is witchcraft. I looked down. I mean, I didn't go that far. I'm like, this is freaking witchcraft. The sun is getting ready to set. I don't know where my phone is. I was using my phone to navigation to help me get out, because if it's going to be pitch black, I can't see the terrain, so I'll need my navigation to get out from the canyon. It's pretty sketchy out there, right? And in my heart, it was like, I realized, it was like, you know what, I'm not gonna see my phone until whatever's covering my phone will allow me to see. That was the vibe I got. Right. And it was just kind of like, it was just like, it was just like deep breath. I just paid respect. And I just said in my heart, if I've been dishonorable in any way, or if I'm being disrespectful to the energy here, please forgive me. And I just began to like just walk out. I was just like, I get it. I'm not going to find my phone right now. It's getting darker and darker. And then right when I did that, I just looked down, right, and then there's my phone like right in front of me. We got out, everything worked out. But where I was at, these petroglyphs, they're 10 to 12,000 years old, man. These are from the end of the last ice age when these are built. These are not built by the Paiutes. These are built before the Paiutes. They were carved before the Paiutes, man. And the energy there was super powerful. And I felt like that spirit, it wasn't like, the energy wasn't like trying to punish me. It was almost, because if you watch this video, it's very masculine. It's very masculine. It's very penetrative. And it was almost like having a one night stand with a woman, and then she hid my pants the next day, and I'm trying to like leave, and she's in bed looking at me, laughing her butt off because I can't find my pants. It was like that. It was like, but she was a bad chick, right? She was a bad woman. So that was the story about my phone and that video. That was just one of those things that it was extremely humbling. Though I can laugh about this, it was one of those moments that I'll never ever forget in my entire life. It's almost like it's like I felt like the gods heard us and they let us know.
Wow,
so that's what I wanted to share.
That's awesome, and I want to tell you, I want to make it out to California one of these days and go out there and visit that area. I'd love to see that stuff, any kind of energy, feed off of that stuff.
Hey, we got a cabin in Truckee we have a family cabin up in the Truckee area, man. That'd be freaking fantastic if you guys came up. We could take a little day trip out there.
We'll definitely have to do that. See, as I'm finishing up here, let me see. We talked about what else. Where else can people reach out to you? What's your other than Facebook? You have YouTube.
Yeah. So my YouTube, Michael Stevens Healing, or Michael Stevens Healing. I have a bunch of videos on there. On Instagram at Follow My Call. So it's MYCALL, like Michael, but my call. Follow My Call. And also the same thing for TikTok, if you guys want to see what I'm doing. Really, it's just just really about helping people think and clearly connect into what's there, and my job is not to tell you what to do, it's just to lead you to your own source of authority.
Nice. And lastly, since this show is about creating your own reality, I always like to ask everybody, if you could create an instant reality right now, your perfect reality, what would you create and why?
Ooh, man, beautiful. When I say like right now, like this is more of an experience, which is part of reality, but the reality that I am creating is I plan on being on a couple camels with my family, walking, just kind of cruising through Giza right
Wow.
now. Like that's really um, that's really the what that's my heart just burned right now for that. And people are going to naturally find that as we embark on discovering who we are on a more fundamental level, our own, as we start to learn our own individual story, it ties into our collective story and our collective history. And you know, and so the more I dive into my own personal story, my soul journey, I dive into history and how we got here, and places like Giza are places that pull my heart right now.
I love it. Do you, as we wrap up, I'll ask this last bit. How might be awkward. How are your toes as far as how do your feet look? Because I found a thing the other night, a graph that showed you based on the way your toes are, it gives you uh, your lineage, like where you're truly your heritage is from. Mine, I'm from. It says I'm from Egypt because my big toes all the way the biggest, and then it goes in a nice like stair step down. Whereas
Okay.
it goes like this at an angle, like my big toe, and then it goes at a nice, basically an angle from tallest to shortest. Whereas I think Greek, if you have Greek origins, it was the second, your big toe, and then your second toe is taller than your big toe, and then the other ones go in order, and it's like different lineages, different heritages. Your toes, like certain toes, are longer than the other, is what it
Interesting.
claims.
Interesting.
You
Well,
just
hey, I'll have to send you. I'll have to text you a little selfie of my feet one of these nights. You know.
yeah, that's it.
you know.
Pull them up for me first, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's interesting. Excuse me. I'll definitely. We can talk about that in the future. I'll take a look. But my mom's side, so my father's side, my dad did just the DNA stuff, and which it tells you a little bit,
Right.
but so my on my father's side, um, mainly West African, some East African, South African, and Southeast Asian on my dad's side. My mom's side, real simple, man. I'm 30% Danish, 20% Scottish.
Hmm.
So Scandinavian and Celt, and then I guess it'd be like an Afro Viking or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Cool.
guess so. It's more of a Viking kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I've
Oh,
always, before that, I've always resonated with. I moved here from Alaska. Like I've always been drawn to the north and the cold on a real like intuitive level. I think that has a lot to do with mom, and that mitochondria. Like it's definitely something. Um, it's one of the visiting Scotland. I absolutely felt like I was at home, and I've been to a lot of places that I felt like, man, this is like home to me. It felt right, and it's
yeah.
like, where does that come from? I don't know. So
I only asked that because you said the camels riding in in
yeah,
Giza and everything, and for me, that's a place I've always been drawn is Egypt. I feel like I could do a DNA test. It's going to tell me what it's going to tell me, but our true lineage, our true ancestry. For
yes,
me, I'm told I think I come straight from the lineage of the Egyptians. Ten
yes,
thousand years ago type.
yeah,
Where you can be South American, you can be
yeah,
Asian, you can be African. I think everybody from Africa, I think, originated in that, or I don't know for
yeah,
sure, in that Egyptian area, or maybe there were multiple spots. I think South Africa's a big area down there too. So I don't know.
yeah.
But yeah, I
Well,
just find it fascinating where I've been. where I've always been pulled my whole life.
Yeah, you know what? Like you're right because the geography, the people are different than the actual geography, and so like so what's interesting about you talk about Egypt and Mesopotamia area, and I say things like Scandinavians. Well, as I dove deep studying the origins of Odin, right? Odin supposedly was from a place called Turkland, right? And that's where Asgard was, right? It was supposed to be in this place called Turkland, right?
Hmm.
And so, but you found out that Asgard and Troy were synonymous with each other, and you're like, wait, what? Oh yeah. So, anyways, I know we're getting close to the end of this talk, but
Yeah.
you start to, you look at these, these origins of people, and I think it really comes. I think our soul story, if we have much older origins, they had to have come through these regions at one time.
Absolutely, and that ties back so much. What we've talked about today is tied back to uh, the Urantia book, because it gives it tells you the lineage of everybody, and we've had back then, however many 25,000 years ago, there were the blue race, the green race, the tan race, the red race of people. Those were the North Americans. The tan race were the
Yeah,
Asians.
yeah.
The blue race, I believe, were the Europeans, and the red, or the you've got the black race, and there were just multiple. We no longer have those colors like we
Yeah,
evolved out of those colors because we've all intermixed. But we were different species more or less, and we all had our own areas of the world that we inhabited, and over thousands and decades and millennia, we've infused together, and the colors have basically been eradicated. Other than we still got Asian, we've still got African American, we've got whites, but those are primarily South American, I guess. So you still got little hints of it, but I think it's more of just the spectrum's a lot less. We don't have any more green people and more
right.
blue and bright reds like we used to. But yeah, it's fascinating, just the origins on all that stuff. I could talk for hours and hours.
We need to have another conversation just about this stuff.
Absolutely, that sounds
You know
like
what I'm saying?
a plan. I think we should. So, any last words you want to say to the audience before you go, and then I will take us out.
Just Joey, thank you. Everybody, thank you. I love you all. I love you all, and I'm just sending you all just just what you guys need to move forward. Sending you guys just just love and peace and safety and courage and all that good stuff. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael, for joining me today. Like I said, I'll have all of his links, all of his contact information in the comments box below. If you like this interview, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe on the channel so you can be notified of future videos, future interviews. If this resonated with you, leave some comments in the comment box. Share it with some friends, family, or your community. But either way, until next time, thanks again for watching. Stay blessed, and remember to ask yourself, what reality are you choosing to create today? Goodbye.